And the blood eagle is one of these things. Yes, it was very, very rare, and it was a punishment reserved for the most horrible offenses. The Vikings are remembered as fearless warriors and explorers, but their hidden traditions reveal a far darker side. Beneath the surface of their legendary conquests lie disturbing rituals and customs that history prefers to ignore. From brutal sacrifices to scary superstitions leading to brutalities, these chilling practices paint a shocking picture of Viking life, and even their children are not exempted. What secrets did these fierce seafarers keep hidden from the world for so long? Join us as we uncover the haunting traditions of the Vikings no one dares to talk about. Blood Eagle, the bloodiest wings. In Viking history, there is a ritual so terrifying that scholars have argued for centuries about whether it really happened or was just a myth. The blood eagle, one of the most brutal ways to execute someone, was more than just a method of killing. It was a powerful message, meant to be remembered for generations. In this ritual, the victim is forced face down, unable to resist. The attacker works with eerie precision, cutting deep into the victim's back. Each cut is deliberate, slicing through skin and muscle to reveal the rib cage. They carefully follow the spine, breaking the ribs one at a time. Once the ribs are separated, they are pulled outward, creating a horrifying shape that looks like a pair of wings. The horror doesn't stop there. The attacker pulls the lungs through the open wound, leaving them hanging outside the body. They move faintly as if struggling for air. This gruesome display resembles the outstretched wings of an eagle, a haunting and brutal image that stays in the mind. It's more than just a killing, it's a horrifying display of cruelty. The blood eagle wasn't just random violence, it was a punishment reserved for the most despised enemies, especially those who had killed someone's father or a close male relative. In Viking culture, honor and revenge were closely connected, and this ritual was seen as the ultimate act of vengeance. 9 medieval texts, written in Old Norse and Latin, describe the blood eagle. They all share a similar story. The victim, often a nobleman or king, was captured during battle and then subjected to this gruesome death. The most famous victim was King Ella of Northumbria, who allegedly suffered this fate at the hands of Ivar the Boneless, a Viking chieftain seeking revenge for his father's death. Recent research has brought new understanding to this debated ritual. A team of medical experts, anatomists, and historians used modern modeling software to recreate the blood eagle and found that while extremely difficult, it was physically possible to perform. Their study uncovered technical details that were not known before. Viking executioners likely used specialized tools, such as spears with shallow hooks, to separate the ribs from the spine. This finding also explains why spears appear in some rare medieval artwork showing the ritual. The victim's suffering, though intense, likely didn't last as long as many suggest. The research team found that death would have occurred early in the process, caused by severe blood loss and the effects of shock. These physical reactions would have made the body shut down quickly, sparing the victim from prolonged pain. Unlike what many believe, the evidence shows that most of the ritual happened after the victim had already died. Once death occurred, the executioners continued with the process, carefully finishing the ritual. This discovery changes how we see the ritual today. It was not just an act of cruelty, but a planned ceremony with deep meaning. After death, the victim's body was used to send a powerful message of strength, fear, and respect that went beyond their life. The blood eagle wasn't just about physical torture, it carried deep symbolic meaning in Viking society. The eagle was associated with Odin, the supreme Norse god of war, wisdom, and death. By shaping their enemy's body into an eagle, Vikings might have been making a strong symbol meant to be seen by both people and their gods. The blood eagle ritual was very complicated and required a lot of knowledge about the human body. The person performing it had to carefully cut through muscles, avoid major blood vessels, and use the body's natural shape to create the wings. This suggests that certain people may have been trained to perform this ritual, making it even more ceremonial. Archaeologists haven't found clear proof that the blood eagle was real. However, Viking burial sites have shown bodies with similar types of post-death cutting, suggesting that such rituals were part of their culture. The blood eagle's influence extends far beyond its historical context. It has captured modern imagination, appearing in television shows like Vikings. The punishments, no matter how cruel they were well deserved for the crime, and the blood eagle is one of these things. And video games, such as Assassin's Creed Valhalla, While many modern versions of the blood eagle are exaggerated, they help us understand how the Vikings used complex execution rituals to show power, revenge, and control over society. To understand the blood eagle, we need to look beyond just the violence. It was part of a society where violence had specific social and political purposes. The careful planning, the choice of victim, and the detailed way it was carried out show that it was more than just a brutal death. It was a performance designed to show power, take revenge, and restore honor. Even though historians still debate whether it really happened, the blood eagle is important for understanding Viking society, their beliefs, and how they lived. While the blood eagle represented the ultimate act of revenge, what other dark rituals did Vikings perform that made even their contemporaries shudder in horror? Human sacrifice and slave rituals. In the heart of Uppsala, Sweden, stood a magnificent temple, where every 9 years, Vikings gathered for a ritual that would make modern stomachs turn. According to Adam of Bremen, a German chronicler, writing in the 11th century, 9 males of every species, including humans, were sacrificed in a grand festival that lasted 9 days. This wasn't random bloodshed. The blot, as these sacrificial ceremonies were called, followed strict religious protocols. The victims' bodies were hung in a sacred grove near the temple. Their blood was believed to feed the gods and ensure prosperity for the community. The number 9 held special significance, representing the 9 worlds in Norse cosmology. But Uppsala wasn't the only site of its kind. Across Viking territories, blot ceremonies were a cornerstone of spiritual life, held regularly to mark the rhythms of the seasons or address times of crisis. These deeply symbolic rituals connected communities with their gods, reinforcing the delicate balance between survival and divine favor. Archaeological evidence has brought these ceremonies into sharper focus, uncovering dedicated sacrificial sites where offerings of both animals and humans were made in reverence or desperation. They carefully dug and found evidence of widespread human sacrifice among the Aztecs. At Trelleborg in Denmark, a ring fortress of strategic and cultural importance, researchers unearthed human remains bearing unmistakable marks of ritual killing. These signs include deliberate cuts and fractures, indicating controlled and ceremonial execution rather than random violence. Alongside the human bones lay carefully arranged remains of animals, such as cattle and horses, their placement suggesting they were offerings meant to accompany the human sacrifices. This pattern repeats at other Viking sites, where specific locations appear to have been sanctified for the purpose of sacrifice. In some cases, pits filled with burned bones and tools have been uncovered, hinting at ceremonial fires used to dispatch or consecrate the offerings. These findings suggest a highly organized system, where sacrifices were not impulsive acts, but deeply ingrained traditions carried out with reverence and precision. The scope of these sacrifices varied by region and circumstance. During lean winters or after devastating raids, the ceremonies may have taken on an urgent tone, seeking divine intervention to restore balance. During harvest festivals or solstices, the offerings likely celebrated the god's bounty, reaffirming the community's gratitude and loyalty. These rituals, whether desperate or celebratory, were a visceral reminder of the Vikings' intertwined relationship with their environment, their gods, and the fragile cycle of life and death. Perhaps the most detailed account of Viking sacrificial practices comes from Arab diplomat Ahmad ibn Fadlan, who witnessed a Viking chieftain's funeral in 922 CE. His description of a slave girl's sacrifice is particularly haunting. The girl, chosen or volunteered for the honor, spent her final days in an elaborate ceremony involving ritual intoxication, rites, and finally, death by strangulation and stabbing. The procedure was carefully choreographed. The girl was lifted 3 times to peer into a temporary wooden structure, each time reciting specific phrases about seeing her dead master in the afterlife. She was then led inside, where multiple men had ritual intercourse with her, before the chief's closest female relative delivered the fatal blow. Recent archaeological discoveries have added depth to these accounts. At Gamla Uppsala, scientists found evidence of a massive feasting hall where sacrificial ceremonies took place. Animal bones showed clear butchery marks, while human remains revealed signs of violent death, followed by careful arrangement suggesting these weren't battlefield casualties, but ritual offerings. The role of slaves, also known as thralls, in these ceremonies was particularly complex. While some, like Ibn Fadlan's slave girl, were sacrificed, Others participated as ritual specialists or servers during the feasts that followed sacrifices. Evidence suggests that thralls could sometimes elevate their status through participation in religious ceremonies, though this didn't protect them from becoming offerings themselves. The sacrificial feasts were elaborate affairs where hierarchies were displayed and reinforced. Meat from sacrificed animals was carefully distributed according to social rank, while the blood was collected in special bowls called boli. Priests used consecrated twigs to sprinkle this blood on temple walls, statues of gods, and participants, a practice that horrified Christian missionaries. Not all sacrifices were equal. Different gods demanded different offerings. Odin, the god of death and wisdom, was associated with hanging sacrifices, while Thor received animals like goats and rams. Freya, the fertility god, was offered to both animals and humans during critical agricultural periods. These practices weren't limited to major temples. The victim's lifeless body was ceremoniously thrown down the steep steps of the temple. Local chieftains maintained smaller sacrificial sites on their properties, where seasonal offerings were made to ensure good harvests and military success. Archaeological evidence shows these sites often included special buildings for preparing sacrificial meals and storing ritual equipment. The Viking sacrificial practices reflected a sophisticated understanding of the relationship between the human and divine worlds. They believed these offerings maintained cosmic balance and ensured continued divine favor. The rituals were carefully timed to coincide with astronomical events and agricultural cycles, showing a deep connection between religious practice and practical survival. Modern analysis of sacrificial sites has revealed unexpected details about Viking religious practices. Many victims show signs of careful preparation, including special diets in the weeks before death and the consumption of mind-altering substances. This suggests these weren't merely executions, but complex religious ceremonies requiring considerable planning and resources. The practice of human sacrifice among Vikings gradually declined with the spread of Christianity, though some remote areas maintained these traditions well into the 11th century. The transition wasn't always peaceful. Several Norse sagas describe violent conflicts between those maintaining the old ways and Christian converts who viewed these practices with horror. These sacrificial rituals, while shocking to modern sensibilities, reveal a society with complex religious beliefs and social structures. There's a clear behavioral pattern of human sacrifices and of animals. After exploring the dark world of Viking sacrificial rituals, one might wonder if their appetite for violence extended even further. Did Vikings really consume human flesh? Ritualistic cannibalism. Among the many disturbing practices attributed to Vikings, few have ignited as much debate as the possibility of cannibalism. Archaeological discoveries scattered across the British Isles have revealed human bones bearing distinct cut marks, hinting at a scary story. However, the narrative is far more intricate than a simple thirst for blood or flesh. These findings delve into the murky intersection of survival, ritual, and cultural beliefs. Recent excavations at multiple Viking burial sites have uncovered human bones showing systematic cutting patterns, unmistakably indicative of deliberate flesh removal. Normally, when we excavate Viking graves, we'd be lucky if there were teeth left in the grave, unlike the jagged injuries of battle or the random abrasions of natural decomposition. These marks are precise and methodical, suggesting a practiced hand. At sites in Scotland and Ireland, bones stripped of flesh were unearthed alongside more conventional burial remains. This juxtaposition strongly indicates that these acts were not products of random violence or desperation, but rather part of a deliberate, possibly ceremonial practice. Some evidence points to practical explanations. During periods of scarcity, the removal of flesh may have been a grim necessity, with survival overriding societal taboos. However, the context of these sites hints at something deeper. The careful arrangement of defleshed bones and their placement within burial mounds suggest a ritualistic element, perhaps intended to honor the dead or symbolize a spiritual transition. In Norse mythology, the body held great significance, and disassembling it may have represented a means of preparing the deceased for their journey to the afterlife. These findings have challenged long-held assumptions, inviting a re-examination of Viking culture and its complex relationship with death and the body. Far from being mindless acts of barbarism, these practices might reveal a society deeply attuned to symbolic gestures, where even the most unsettling actions held profound meaning. The Vikings believed consuming an enemy's flesh could transfer their strength and courage to the eater. This wasn't unique to Norse culture. Many ancient societies practiced ritual cannibalism for similar